And good evening, I'm Jonathan Higgins.
And I'm Rich Carlson.
And we're the Scanner Guys. If this is the first time watching the broadcast, welcome, welcome. This is a big topic that everybody loves to talk about, Rich. And it's, what is it?
SDS.
And
those wonderful letters.
yeah, the SDS100 and 200. We get tons of calls about those radios. People ask a lot of questions. It's still a huge thing in the radio reference forums as a topic of discussion.
Absolutely, for good and bad. And it is probably the most popular scanner that has ever come out. And it's going on 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, it was, what was it, 2018? We were at Dayton announcing the SDS100.
Yep.
And that was a big deal. I remember that we had the privilege of announcing that radio and just all the people that came to the booth. And
I mean, we had the very first ones that people could put their hands on and they could see, and we're doing videos out of it and stuff like that. We had such a great time with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the coolest thing, the SDSs, and we're going to talk about them at great length this evening. So sit back, relax. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to try to get to everybody's questions. If you have questions and they pertain to what we're talking about, we'll try to flash them up on the screen. Any questions that are, other than what we're talking about, we'll try to answer it in the second half. We're going to try to get to everybody's question. There's going to be a lot of people watching tonight, so let's dive into the topic of discussion right now, which of course is the Uniden Bearcat SDS100 and 200. And let's go to the next slide here. Just a reminder, we tell you each and every week, Rich, what do we tell them to do right now?
Click that subscribe button. Do it now.
Yep. Click that subscribe button. You're watching us on YouTube.
Yep.
Do that right.
Select notifications, the bell.
Yes. And then also check us out on our other social media as well. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're across the board, Rich, when it comes to social media. So definitely do that. Check out our website, thescannerguys.weebly.com. Thescannerguys@weebly.com. So that's going to be that's going to be a good place to check out our website, learn a little bit more about the Scanner Guys as well. And guess what, Rich? As you're getting notifications on your phone, you could be getting a notification for our email. We do have a newsletter you can check out. Sign up for the Scanner Guys newsletter, thescannerguys.weebly.com. If you're on the list, you got an email today telling you a little bit more about the show to tune in. We also gave you some links to the SDS100 and 200 so you could purchase those. And we also have some links to our past shows in case you missed them.
Yeah. We've been doing this for a long time now, and there's a lot of videos to catch up on if you're a newcomer, like Brighton. Yeah.
And we've had a lot of good shows this season in the 2021 season. And some really good shows. And the great thing about it, if you're a first-time watcher, we cover the main topic in the first half. And the second topic, Rich calls it Romper Room, when everybody asks questions. So the thing is if you rewatch a broadcast, the meat and potatoes is right in the beginning. So you can watch that portion of it, and then you can decide whether or not you want to watch the Romper Room segment. But the good stuff is right in the beginning. So let's dive into the next slide. Some big news. We've been talking about this, Rich, for how long?
A bit over a year. Yeah.
Yeah, so Bearcat Joe announced himself on Radio Reference. This was big news buzzing through Radio Reference that we have a Uniden scanner product manager, which is good. And those are big shoes to fill, right, Rich?
Oh yeah. Paul was an amazing guy. Having met him several times and dealt with him a lot. A great guy. There's just, you can't say enough good things, about the guy. And when he died about a year or so ago, he left some huge shoes. and now Joe Bearcat is taking over. And we know Joe, and he will do a good job at it. And he will be all over the social media on Radio Reference, especially, and the other social media outlets, email lists, and everything else like that.
Yeah, so Bearcat Joe, welcome. From what we understand, he is a fan of the show and he watches often. So as soon as he's available, we're going to have him on as a guest. We've already been in communication with him already to get him on. So we're looking forward to that. I mean, the great thing about that is we'll be able to talk to him about everything, the various things that we have going on, in the scanner world. He can share with us the information he's able to. And plus, you were mentioning about, getting new firmware for the 125 AT, which is a big thing.
Yeah, this was actually a very important thing, and he asked us specifically to mention this tonight. If you've got a 125 AT, there's a different version of the 125. Functionally, it's identical. What happens is that since the radio's been being made for quite a while, there's some new hardware pieces inside the radio because other, certain chips or parts were unavailable, so they had to use newer ones that were available. And because of that, they had to update the firmware for that particular version of the radio. And the problem is that firmware only works on the newer version of those radios and won't work on the older version of the radios. And some people have had some issues with that. So that is being addressed through the version update program. And Joe is going to have more information about that as he starts getting his feet wet with this new job.
Well, this is very, very exciting, to be able to have somebody at the helm now. And there was one comment there. If it wasn't for Paul, we may have not have seen the SDS radios.
Yeah, absolutely.
He really spearheaded a lot of the big innovations over the last several decades with Uniden, from the Home Patrol, which is the first original zip code based scanner, and still to this day the only scanner with a touchscreen display.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that nobody else has picked up on that and that they haven't come out with more of them. But that is it's actually a very huge thing. When that first came out, I was like, I don't know, but now I use them all the time. They're great.
Yeah, and I have the Home Patrol 1 and 2, and I love it. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of the show tonight. So it's the SDS100 and 200 frequent asked questions. Now, these are questions that we get from people all the time. Plus, we're going to give you a little bit of an overview of the radios as well. What's the big deal with these radios? I mean, a lot of people, say, why should I upgrade? And there's many, many reasons we're going to show you tonight. And here are those reasons, the big, big reasons. Rich, tell us about the first bullet point.
All right. These are the very first radios called True IQ scanners, and they were designed specifically around an SDR, a software-defined radio, which allows a lot more control of the inner workings of the radio by computers and or firmware. So new features and new behaviors can be determined by the firmware versus the hardware. You don't need to add new filters or new this or new that to make it do new things. It's basically update the firmware and it will totally change the behavior of the radio. It's the first portable and or desktop scanner that has that.
Yeah, and the radio is a little bit lighter hardware wise.
Yeah.
Because it's not having so many chips and components inside, because it's doing this all via software more than anything. And like you said, you've opened the SDS 200 and found there's a lot of room.
Yeah, there's a lot of open space in there. One of the things I do is I love to peek inside the radio, and I'll take pictures of it so that I don't have to open it up again. I can just refer back to my pictures. And I do like seeing the insides of the radios. I mean, I even took apart my GPS unit just to see what was in it. And there is a lot of room in there. They could have made the box quite a bit smaller, but they left the height would have had to stay higher to accommodate that large display.
And that's probably the main reason why is they wanted to give you a beefy screen. And that's a huge factor with these radios. Both of them, the handheld and the base unit, have a decent sized screen. It's a full color display. Yeah.
That's sign language for color.
So the other thing that we're both used to at this point, and most of you, is zip code based scanning and favorites lists. Yeah. So that really wasn't something new on the SDS 100 and 200, but the biggest thing, biggest problem solver with the SDS 100 and 200 is simulcast.
Yep, you betcha. And there is nothing better than an SDS on simulcast when it comes to scanners.
And the simulcast has been a huge issue. Many of these trunk systems have just grown all across the country, and they have simulcast systems, and it raises havoc with the scanner, which we're going to show in the next slide. Simulcast sites share the same exact frequency sets at each tower. All the traffic is identical to the frequency at each tower, and each tower transmits the same site ID. Guess what happens with the radio, Rich?
Ooh. It gets all confused. So the what happens is all these signals get to your radio at slightly different times because one site is real close and the other site is really far away, and there's another site that's kind of over there someplace, and it takes a little bit extra time for the sites that are really far away to hit your radio, and it's just long enough for the ones and the zeros, being that it's digital, it's all just ones and zeros, and the ones from site A mix up with the zeros from site B, and then you throw site C into the mix and the radio just goes blah.
Yeah, and that's where we get a lot of that. You've got full bars on the radio, and then you get the bloop, 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 or dropouts completely.
You'll see the signal strength going like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I was listening to, for perfect example, I have a 536 here in the studio. I can use my 536 here in the studio and monitor the trunk system down in Charlotte. And the reason why I'm getting it so good, I'm so far away from that simulcast system, it doesn't get confused by the other towers. You and I were talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
And that's the reasoning behind it. I'm so far away from it, it's not getting confused by the other towers. You look at this site map here. So if I was dead in the center of that map, there's going to be a lot of radio confusion right in the middle of it, right?
Oh, yeah, because you're getting sites, you're getting all 5 sites hitting your radio at the same time, but they're slightly different distances away from you. So all those ones and zeros are getting in there at slightly different times. And regular RF type scanners with the RF circuitry inside them can't process that simulcast particularly well. And unless you're in a specific location, or you can kind of force your radio to pick up one site and one site only, the radio is going to be, starting to miss conversations, miss words, miss entire phrases, or just throw up its hand and say, "Forget it, I'm not even going to try."
It's like I give up. That's information overload for me.
Yeah, I'm done.
Done. But yeah, this is the big core reason. And that's why prior to the STSs, you saw unication pagers started to take off because somebody figured out it would be a good scanner component. That is good at the simulcast. But the thing with unication pagers, it can only do one job. It's not able to do all the other things that a scanner can do. So
it can do one thing very well,
yes,
but it can't do anything else.
So with the SDS 100 and 200, it can do it all. You can monitor your analog, you can monitor your digital, monitor conventional, trunking, you
Well,
name it.
it's like antennas. You can you put a Yagi antenna for 800 megahertz, okay, and it's a fantastic antenna for a specific direction on a specific set of frequencies. But you can't use that to listen omnidirectional, and you can't use that for VHF and UHF. It just ain't gonna happen. But you put a discone up there, and it's going to be able to pick up everything pretty darn well. But that Yagi is going to do one direction and one set of frequencies really good to the exclusion of just about everything else. That's the same thing with the unication. The unication does really well on digital systems, on digital trunking systems. That's pretty much all it does.
Yeah, I mean, it can monitor analog conventional frequencies depending on if you get the VHF or UHF radio. But the thing is, it can't do both at the same time.
Right.
I mean, the thing is, it's great. And like you said, the Yagi antenna example. With the SDSs, you can do it all and scan it all at the same time. So that is that. So let's take a look at the layout of the radio. As we've learned from the SDSs, it's a different type of looking radio. They didn't recreate the 325 or any of the other, or the 125 AT. It's basically in its own shell. We'll start off with the SMA antenna up on the top there, which is we're familiar with because a lot of the Uniden radios have incorporated the SDS. But the only difference is this radio has a lip. Which kind of raises some issues where people have to either get a particular antenna that'll work for the SDS, which Rich is going to show us right now, I think.
So the antenna that comes with it is made specifically for it, and unfortunately, it's in the car right now because I was using it the other day. But this is the Remtronics antenna. It's got a specific size, but that lip kind of sticks up above the antenna connection, and a regular everyday SMA antenna won't fit into it. It's because the base of it is too wide. So it has to be a little bit narrow, and the antenna that comes with it,
So you can see there how the SMA connection sits in that lip there.
Yeah.
And you can see from, let me just take off my case and I can show you a little bit more. Right here, you can see right here, it's got this lip here, and the antenna. This is the stock antenna, and it sits in there. That metal part will sit in there, and you see the rubber gasket that'll be covered. So if I put it in here, we'll see that the metal. See how that went away? So that's now below the lip.
Yeah, and that gives it some water. It's not waterproof, but it's water resistant. And the Remtronics antenna for the SDS has the same type of feature where it fits in there, and it's got the grommet, so it retains that water resistance. If you are looking for a wideband solution for your SDS, I love my Austin Condor antenna. They're huge. They're big. I mean, I got a big head, and this thing's bigger than my head. So it's huge. It's 12 inches long?
Yeah, it's about 12 inches.
Yeah, and on the Condor antenna, the rubber part on the base goes all the way down to the bottom of the SMA. So it would not fit onto the SDS100. It works great on a 436 or a 396, but it doesn't work particularly well on an SDS because that rubber goes all the way down. So what I did is I trimmed it, and I'm trying to find a place where it focuses good on there. And it actually, so I just trimmed about, 1/16 of an inch, or it's 3/32, just a little bit, and just enough so that metal goes down, and then the rubber remainder does make contact with the lip. So it's not particularly water resistant anymore, but that's not the idea. But now I can use my Condor on there. You can use an adapter, and mine has got the adapter on it right now. But I hate using adapters when I don't have to.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about it. I mean, I'm using right now the stock antenna. It works really well. The other
Mm-hmm.
antenna is the one that Rich was showing, which I would probably recommend if you're looking for an 800 megahertz, 700 megahertz antenna, is the Rimtronics one. I would strongly recommend that. Let's go back to the layout of the radio as well. So we're used to the menu buttons on the side, which is
Yep.
right here. So you can see the function button, which is the green, and then the red is the menu button. So that is very similar to the 436 HP.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the soft keys, which you can
Yeah.
see here and on the screen. So that'll pertain to a menu option, which is just above on the screen. We've got the very similar to many of the Uniden radios, the push to power button. And then, of course, the multifunction knob. This is kind of the thing that sets apart the Unidens versus the Whistlers with the multifunction knob. Rich, tell us a little bit about that.
All right, so this one allows you to do a lot of stuff with it, multiple functions. It can rotate it, and you can also press it. And just like the big silver knob on the 996s and the 536s, when you press it, it's usually the same as pressing the E for enter button. It's just more convenient, although sometimes it does have a slightly different function. But you would, and then sometimes that knob, the functions of that knob can be altered by the function button on the side of the radio. So when you just turn the knob, it's a scroll knob. So if the radio is in the scan mode, but it's stopped on a channel, you turn the knob and it will restart the scan. If you turn the knob to the left, it'll restart the scan down. If you turn the knob to the right, it'll rescan the scan. It'll rescan the channels in upward direction.
Yep.
If you press the function button I'm sorry, if you just press the knob down and turn it, it becomes a volume control.
Yep.
If you press the function button and then press the knob and then turn it, now it's your squelch control. And they make that one a little more difficult because most of the time the squelch is set it and forget it. So, you're not going to have to adjust that so often, but you are going to have to adjust the volume. So to adjust the volume, it's just real simple. Just tap the knob, adjust your volume, and then let it go, and it'll automatically go back to normal after that. And it'll stay on the volume.
Yeah, it's pretty simple and straightforward, with it. I mean, for the most part, you're going to be, when you have it on, you're going to be doing volume control for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And, I like that, it's one knob. With a lot of the competitor radios, it's a two knob, so the squelch and the volume have its own.
Yeah.
But with this radio, it's just all in one. We also have the alert lights that are on the screen there, which you can see at the top. And of course, the speaker is right at the bottom. And then if you choose to, you can put on the hand strap on here, which I do have it on. And then the avoid button. Now, many of you, if you haven't had a scanner in quite a while, the avoid button is what the lockout button would have been on a lot of the older radios. And the avoid button has a dual function. So if you were to press it once, it's going to do a temporary avoid. If you press it, double tap it twice, it's going to do a permanent avoid.
When they came out with the Home Patrol, which was the first of the zip code scanners, they changed that terminology for zip code scanners from lockout to avoid. And there was some reasons for that. And a lot of people understand that. They don't understand the lockout terminology. Non-scanner type people may not understand the lockout personality, but they understand the avoid, because when you lock out a channel, it avoids scanning it, but it doesn't delete it from the radio. So I think that's why they came up with that terminology when the Home Patrol came out, and now all of the Uniden zip code scanners use that term avoid, whereas their legacy scanners, the clean slate scanners, still use the lockout. But it still works the same way. You press the button once for temporary lockout and twice for permanent lockout.
And I think kind of the word avoid, especially where if you're using the zip code based programming, where you're not physically programming in those channels yourself, avoid comes off. I don't want to hear this anymore. I just want to avoid it.
Yeah.
So, it's not something that you hand selected. If you put in a zip code, you put in a zip code, it's going to get anything and everything that's pertaining to that zip code. And then you hit the avoid because I don't want to hear it anymore.
Yep.
Something I want to avoid.
Yeah. And remember, avoiding it either temporarily or permanently does not erase it from the radio. You can always unavoid it. And there's a procedure for that. And basically, it's a menu option. You go into the menu and unavoid the channels. It's the easiest way to do it. It doesn't delete it from the radio, which is a good thing because you don't want to delete channels from the radio. The radio's got effectively unlimited memory. There's really no reason to delete a channel. Just avoid the darn thing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Rich, make a mental note. That'll be another thing that we can include in next week's show is how to do that. Because a lot of people are not aware that they could physically do that. So that's another good one that we were talking prior to the broadcast of the show, brainstorming some things for the next week's slideshow. That's another one. That'll be a good one in that one. So definitely tune in. If you're not familiar with that procedure, we're going to cover it next week.
We're going to talk more about that. Yeah. Unavoid.
Now we've taken a look at the SDS 100. Now let's take a look at the 200. Now the 200 is still got some mystery items.
Yeah, well, go back to the 100 again real quick. There's a mystery item on the SDS 100 that confuses the bejesus out of a lot of people.
Yep.
And that is that second USB port on the side of the radio.
Which we can...
Yeah, you can show. Yeah, we don't have a picture of it here, but on the side of the radio...
widen this out.
There are two USB ports. There's the bottom one, which is the main USB port, and that's what's called a USB mini. It's kind of like a trapezoid. And that's the main one, and that's the one that the cable that the radio comes with will plug into. You charge the battery, you do all your programming on that port. There's a second smaller USB port, which is called a USB micro, that's above that. You can power the radio off of that port at this time, and that's it. That's the only thing it does. You can't program it. You can't charge the battery. You can power the radio. Eventually, maybe someday in the future, if the stars align and the waters part, that port will be used for something. But right now, it powers the radio. It doesn't charge. It doesn't do anything. The bottom one is USB mini. That one charges and programs and does all that happy stuff.
Yeah, so that's the SDS 100. We'll continue on. All right, so here is the 200. Very similar, but it's a base mobile version, as we can see here. So we have a headphone jack, just like
go back to the go back to the slide.
Oh yeah, that's right. Here we go.
There you go.
I see the slide, but nobody else does.
Yeah, we don't.
So it's very similar. The thing that throws me off, and this is another design change that Uniden has done. Now, the volume and squelch are flipped. So if you've got a 996, a 15, a 536, any of those radios, the volume knob is down on the bottom and the squelch is on the top. Not on the SDS 200. It's the opposite.
Yeah, and it drives me nuts when I'm trying to turn the volumes down because I'm always hitting the squelch control.
Yeah, because you're so used to going to that bottom knob, which I kind of prefer it up in the corner, just the where it is. And that's one of the major differences. So if you own any of the other radios, you have to get used to, especially if the radios are side by side or top and bottom. I could tell you the truth. I find myself often, if I'm picking up a call here in the office, touching the wrong knob. Lowering the volume. I'm lowering the squelch instead of the volume. And it's just something to get used to. The other thing, look at this. There's an Ethernet jack in the front of the radio. And I remember when we were working on this, we were like, why is there an Ethernet jack in the front of the radio? And why is it directly below the squelch knob?
Yeah, and the knob of the Ethernet port is on the wrong side, but unfortunately, by the time we got it, it was too late to change that. So,
yeah, so the Ethernet jack is able to be connected up to your network, and you can do some cool things remotely with the scanner. You can even access it through the Siren app. So that's something that you can do there. The jack that we use all the time, if you're doing programming from computer through the cable to the scanner, you're going to be using the micro USB jack. And this is a novelty thing with this particular radio. So you probably are programming your 996P2, your 536, your portable radios, all with the same cable, but not with this one, Rich.
Yep. Yeah, this one uses a USB micro, which is the smaller one, and not the USB mini, which the SDS100 uses. Again, we're not quite sure why, but that is kind of like the way things are going for a lot of these things. But it is a smaller port. I think it's a little more sturdy, but I don't know for sure. But again, yeah, virtual control and programming is all done through the mini USB port. And then we've got the USB-A port.
Yes. Yes, the USB-A port is a mystery one. Now, many of you have the radio, and there is a rubber protective cover on that, so it doesn't typically look the way it is in the image. You really don't see it. Like on mine, it's got the rubber protector on it, so I don't really see it at all. Rich and I have done a couple of things. Charged iPhones, ran the Home Patrol 2 via the SDS 200. Yes, the SDS 200. It's so powerful. It can charge your Home Patrol, not charge, but run your Home Patrol 2.
Bill gets the Star of the Day post here.
What
the very last post?
Yeah.
Comment. So I'm sorry. When we put that slide together, that is a micro USB and not a mini USB.
Yeah. That was my bad. And then we also have the soft keys. As you can see here in the on the screen, it pertains to, in this screen, system, department, and channel. The great thing about it is while the scanner is scanning, let's say you want to stay locked in on a particular department. In this case, it's the sheriff patrol. So there may be in this grouping for this department other channels that pertain to the sheriff department. If you press the department button, it's going to stay on that department, which is the county sheriff there, and then it's just going to scan things that are within that layer. Same thing with the system. So you see Fort Worth Regional Radio System. Let's say you had a whole bunch of systems in the scanner, but there was something going on within this system that you wanted to monitor. If you hit the system button, it would just stay in that system and then scan everything that's pertaining to that system that you have programmed into your scanner. So it's basically the hold button on steroids.
Yeah.
We're used to, like with a 996, pressing the hold button will hold onto a channel. If you do a press on a 996 for about 5 seconds, it'll hold on that particular system.
System hold, yeah.
Yeah, system hold. So this is a little bit different because you have these soft keys, so you're able to do it at various layers. And of course, last but not least, the channel hold. Guess what that's going to do? It's going to hold on to the individual channel.
Why would they call that channel hold? Why?
It'll hold on to the channel. So in that menu, and of course the headphone jack, and then everybody's favorite, if you're on the channel hold and you take that silver knob, guess what you can do, Rich?
Oh, I'm not sure. What happens?
We can scroll through the channels on the radio.
Yeah, that's a neat thing. And then you can put the radio at department hold, too.
Yeah.
And when you put it in department hold, it will scan all the channels within that department, which is, I thought that was an awesome, awesome thing.
Yeah, I mean that's the great thing about these soft keys, and the soft keys are also on the 536 and the 436 as well. But the
Yeah.
difference is these soft keys can be customized, for various things that are menus above.
Yeah, on the 536 and 436, they're actually, the buttons are physically labeled as system, department, and channel. And you can't change those functionalities. Whereas on these, they can actually be changed on different screens. And sometimes the functionalities do change. And when they do change, the label above it on the screen can change.
Yeah, that's for sure. So yeah, the micro USB jack, not mini. I was probably in a tizzy there because I was doing micro SD card slot. So
Yeah.
the good thing about this radio, with any base unit radio that has an SD card, the slot's right in the front of the radio. The great thing, if this is installed in your vehicle or installed in a rack, you don't have to physically get the radio close to the computer. Essentially,
Right.
just pop out the SD card, make sure you have the radio off. Key thing, before you take out the SD card, turn the radio off, pop out the card, insert it into an SD card reader, and then
Yep.
you'll be able to communicate with the SD card. You'll be able to update firmware, save favorites list, and you can also update the database. So you can do it all. And then what you do is, once you're done with your work, eject it out of your SD card reader, put it back into your radio, boot it up. So if there's a firmware update, what'll happen first thing is your radio will power up. It will install that firmware, and then it'll start scanning whatever you had set, whether it be a database or a favorites list or the full zip code, whatever you had set. It would just start scanning from there.
Yeah, and it makes it so much easier on like, especially the 536 and the 200, because the card is right there on the front of the radio. So yeah, go ahead and mount the radio in there. You don't need to get at the back of the radio or under the radio or something like that to do that type of programming. You don't need to bring the laptop out to the car where it's inconvenient or wherever the radio is mounted. It just take the card out, do the programming. Now I do all my programming directly on the SD card. It's faster for me. I don't have to play around with cables. I just pop the card out, stick it into my card reader, do my programming. Because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 radios right here, and then another one out in the car that all use the same Sentinel software. So I can do database on 8 radios in about 10 minutes just by popping SD cards.
Yeah, and that's certainly handy. I mean, I use that all the time as well. I have a 536 in the truck, so I just pop that SD card out. I do have a spare SD card, which we'll go over later, the reasons why to have that. But yeah, the SD card being on the front of the radio. With the portable radio, I can show you that on the... I'll make sure it's off before I do that. So what you're going to do is remove the door, and then remove the battery. And it's a metal mechanism in there. And you have to be very careful. Basically, you're going to pull forward, and then you can see right here that it's going to slide out. So when you do this, take your time.
Yeah.
Every time I'm talking to a customer on the phone, I tell them what you want to do is, of course, turn the radio off before you take the door off and the battery out. And you want to take your time taking the card out. I know we're excited to replace the card, but you want to take your time. Pay attention how it slides out, because the new card's going to slide right back in. And you want to make sure that you're gentle with this. I mean, it's just a piece of metal, so you want to be gentle.
It's a fragile piece of metal.
Yes. And you want to be careful with it. And once you have it in there, basically it will slide in. It's hard to see on the camera, but you'll press it down. Oops, I just knocked my...
It basically, you got that little metal clip. It hinges. There's 2 little pins that hinge it. So you slide the card into that little metal clip, put it down, and then slide the little clip over.
Yep, just like that. So it's slid right back in.
Yeah.
And then you would make sure...
If you pop that little metal clip off, it's not the end of the world. You just kind of gently kind of squeeze those little pieces in it just a tad, and you can pop the clip back on with a little spring tension. It's not the end of the world. You can usually just fix that yourself. It's just, just be careful, and you won't break the clip. But if you do, it's not a big deal. With the SDSs, it's not even that. You just press the card in very carefully, writing the SD card in. You take your fingernail and you just push in there and pop the card out. And the card will pop out, and you just take the card out. It's a tiny little thing about the size of my fingernail. You take the new card. The metal pieces go down.
Yeah, so the other thing, like what Rich is showing you, is when you're ejecting the card out, pay attention. Just see how it goes in, and see how it comes out is the same way it's going to go in.
Yeah, the metal part goes down and in, and it just goes in just until it clips. It clicks.
Catches, yes.
It catches. And the same thing, when you press it in, you can, you just press it in just enough, and you'll feel it kind of spring back out to you. And David, yes.
And there is the the SDS 200. One more time for everybody. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can make a copy of that SD card. Is basically cloning it. You want to make sure that the file folders are lined up precisely. Because what's happening is your radio internally is looking to those folders. And if those folders are not in the right spot, guess what's going to happen? Yeah. An SD card error, because it's going to be, okay, I need to look for this in this folder. And if it's not present, it's going to be, uh-oh.
Yeah, well, the easiest way to do it is to read radio or card number 1 with Sentinel, and then stick the new card in or plug the other radio in, and then write from Sentinel to that other radio. And you can go from 100 to 200 or 200 to 100 or, vice versa. You can even do it with the 436 and 536.
The only thing you have to keep in mind when you're going from cross units, so any settings that are particularly pertaining to your handheld. Yeah. So if you're cloning from this to the base unit, like, for example, a lot of times I have the screen go to sleep when there's no activity to save on battery. Mm-hmm. And you do the same setting to the SDS 200, you're going to be sitting there and you're oh my God, did I have the radio off? I mean,
because the display went dead.
Because the display went dead, but it's going to carry over any of those feature settings to the other radio. So keep that in mind as well. So you may want to, if you do clone, you may want to take the time and update settings, whether it be in Sentinel or in the radio itself, so it does what you want it to do.
And the other thing with the SDS 200 about the difference with the SDS 100 is they both have a headphone jack, which is a limited audio output, so that when you put on headphones and you turn the volume up, you're not going to blow out your eardrums. The jack on the back of the SDS 200 is a external speaker jack, which the SDS 100 doesn't have, and that will give you your full power out to drive a speaker. So if you're on an SDS 100, it doesn't have enough audio oomph to drive a full size speaker properly. On the SDS 200, it does on the rear jack, not on the headphone jack in the front.
That's for sure. I mean, that's the great thing about it. I have in my truck, I have the 536, and I'm using that rear jack just because of it. I mean, you have the window down, you have the radio on, so you have the scanner on. It becomes a noisy environment in the vehicle. So an external speaker is definitely key. Let's continue on. Display options. So the techie geeks are going to like the one that's on the right. Yeah. The people that want simple and clean are going to want the one on the left. Now, you notice that it's the same information. I'll tell you what, I took these photos, and for whatever reason, I had to reboot the radio, and then I had, it's going to be on something different. So I was scanning, I hit hold on it, and magically, it ended up on the same channel. You notice the time difference?
Oh, that would never have happened for me. You must be blessed, because that never would happen for me.
But do you see the time difference? Picture on the...
the 30 minutes apart.
Yeah, it was pure luck. So basically, this is the same channel on the same trunking system, and you can see all the information out there on the screen. So it's depending. This is user preference. So
Yep.
if you like a lot of information, you're gonna like the one on the right. If you want it to look clean and not needing all the geeky stuff, you look to the one on the left.
Yeah. So simple display gives you
So
just the basics. And then detailed display gives you
and
all the good stuff.
And you notice, so if you own a Home Patrol 1 or Home Patrol 2, you notice that one on the layout looks very familiar on the left, doesn't it?
Yep.
I mean, other than having the menu buttons on the top with the various things, it looks
Yeah.
very familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's no little arrows at the right side of the right edge of the screen.
But yeah, I mean, it's got the
Yeah.
same type of clean little layout.
Yeah.
The great thing about these layouts is on the advanced side, you can customize. And we could do a whole show about customizing your screens. You can
Yeah.
find some of these on Radio Reference. People have shared their customized screen. What does that mean? So you could put the volume and the this, that, and the other thing in different spots. Colors. You can go to town with the colors and change all the colors if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, you can change just about everything on the screen. You could put different items in different locations. There are some stuff that you can't change, but you can change most of the stuff. There's a few things you can't, but almost everything you can change. But on the individual screens, you could put in, especially on the detail screen, you can put all kinds of great techie information, system ID, talk group ID, GPS status, latitude and longitude, the frequencies, the signal strength, the NAC codes, the PL tones, all kinds of crazy stuff you could put just about anywhere on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like literally, you could have a blast with this radio, being able to do. Don't be, like if you're a beginner in this hobby, you can slowly warm up to the radio. It's not something that you got to be like, oh my God, I'm going to be overwhelmed with this radio. These features are here in the radio. It's whether or not you want to activate them and use them.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can turn on the stuff you want and turn off the stuff you don't want. If you don't know what a NAC code is, there's no reason to have it on the screen if you don't care what it is. So you can take that off and put something in that makes sense to you or is important to you. Or if you don't need any of that crud, go to the simple screen. It makes it easier to pick out the stuff that you want right now instead of having to dig through all the rest of the fluff.
That's for sure. So let's continue on here. Now, this is a big component, Rich. I mean, we've talked about this slide is very important. So the radio, and this is a question that we get all the time. Will the radio work on X, Y, and Z?
Yep.
It'll work on APCO 25 Phase 1 and Phase 2, which are good there. It'll work on EDAC, Motorola, LTR systems. It'll work on FM narrow, which is the latest, and FM, FMB, as well as AM modes. So the things that come into extra cost are the other digital types of format: DMR, Mobo Turbo, NXDN or NextEdge, and Pro Voice. Now, why did Uniden make these an additional cost? That's the other question that we get a lot.
Exactly. Because on the Whistler, on the TRX line in Whistler, you get DMR and NXDN with the radio without paying extra for them. The difference between the Uniden model and the Whistler model in this respect is that Uniden is paying a licensing fee to allow it to follow the trunking properly, to make it keep it as simple as possible. It follows the trunking systems on DMR and NXDN properly. If you're listening to just DMR conventional non-trunked or NXDN non-trunked, you're going to have no difference between the Whistler and the Uniden. But the for trunking is where the Uniden really shines on both NXDN and DMR. And Whistler doesn't have the Pro Voice. So if you've got a Pro Voice, if you're one of the very few areas that still have Pro Voice, you're going to get a Uniden scanner because there are no other scanners that do it.
Yeah, I mean, these things are also what Uniden had to do and able to use this technology. They had to get licenses. And the licenses are based on the amount of radios that have DMR. So it's going to cost, or Pro Voice, or NextEdge.
Yeah.
So the other reason why is extra cost is they wanted to give the consumer an option, whether or not they want to have all three or just have one, two, of mix around of those three.
Right.
The thing is if Uniden included all three of those, the price of the radio would go up substantially.
Oh yeah, and these radios are already expensive enough, and it would just raise the price by $100 or more per radio. And if you don't need it, then you don't have to buy it. You're buying the stuff a la carte. So it's like going to a restaurant and you're going to buy you go into McDonald's and you're going to buy a hamburger, fries, and a chocolate shake. Well, I'm not thirsty, so I don't want that chocolate shake, so I'm just get the hamburger and fries. Same thing here. I don't have a DMR, so there's no reason for me to get DMR or Pro Voice or something. And the other thing you remember with the DMR, NXDN, and Pro Voice updates is they're bought on a per radio basis. So when you buy the DMR update for this particular SDS200, it's not transferable to the SDS100 or to your SDS200. It only works with this individual radio and that individual radio's serial number. So it's a one-time purchase. You don't have to pay any annual fee or anything like that. Once you buy it, it's yours forever and ever on that radio. You sell that radio, that DMR update goes with the radio.
Yeah, and that's definitely if you if you sell it. But the thing is you're picking and choosing. I know some people that buy these scanners and they want all three just for the sake of it.
Yeah, and if you've got the kind of money to do that, you can afford to do that, it's not a bad thing because you'll be able to pick up anything anywhere. But if money is a little bit a little bit more of an issue for you and you don't need Pro Voice, don't waste your money.
Yeah, that's for sure. But Pro Voice, the thing with Pro Voice, if you're in an area where they're not using Pro Voice, you're not going to see a Pro Voice system ever come up. It's an older digital trunking system technology, so you're not going to see that come around.
Yeah, it's obsolete now. So
yes. I can think of a couple of things. The MBTA subway and bus operations are using Pro Voice still.
Yeah.
So if you're in the Boston area and you want to monitor that, you need Pro Voice. But for the most part, if you're in an area where there's no Pro Voice, don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, there are some areas that are kind of infamous for having Pro Voice. San Antonio is probably the biggest area with Pro Voice, and they're switching over to a P25 system. And Oklahoma City has already switched out of that. Denver has already switched out of their Pro Voice. So a lot of places that have been Pro Voice have already started to switch out. And like Jonathan said, if they ain't using it now, they ain't going to use it in the future.
All right, we'll continue on here. We've talked about this a lot. GPS scanning.
Yep.
So this right here on the screen is the Uniden BCS GPS Universal GPS Kit. It's got a whole bunch of things. Because it covers a whole bunch of radios. And of course,
Yep.
it supports both the SDS100 and 200. And we went over this in detail. You can check a look at our GPS shows.
Yep.
We've got a couple of them, and we go over, the Volkswagen Beetle going across the road and things turning on and off as you travel. As you can see there, I shrunk down that slide so it's a little display on the right of your screen. You can see the Volkswagen is in between the
now
the
it's
green.
a Matchbox car.
Yeah, the green, the blue, and the yellow. So that means that those particular things are on. The red circle and the purple circle, it's outside of that, so the scanner is not scanning those things. So the thing that we get a lot of questions of, you get all this stuff and you're like, what wire goes with what? So tonight we're going to show you what's needed for the 100 and all the cables you need for the 200. Now I'm being sarcastic about the 200 because it doesn't require that much.
Yep.
So
one of them.
So let's take a look at the 100. You could see we've laid out on the table here, the virtual table of all the components we need. So that little box that you see there, Rich, that of course is the GPS receiver.
Right.
And then we've got the phone cable, which goes from that GPS receiver to the box here, which is the adapter box. And then, of course, the GPS needs to be powered. So you're going to use a serial adapter. And then we've got the serial to the USB mini, and that will plug into the radio. Now, the cool thing about this, as you mention all the time, guess what? You tell the audience what it can do. It can do two things at the same time.
Yeah. Well, not only does it send your GPS coordinates to the radio on your SDS100, it will also power the radio. And that was a neat thing. On our way to Dayton, we had the GPS kit plugged into the side of the radio, and that time it was a little bit different kit, but same platform. And it was powering the radio while we were driving, so you didn't have to have a second power cable going to your cigarette lighter plug. So this contraption will also power your SDS100, which is actually a very convenient feature.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you can see all the components. And the other question that we get a lot, and we covered this last week, is the old GPS kit is the 4800 baud rate. So that's the little circular hockey puck antenna,
right.
Is the 4800. The baud rate for this GPS kit is 9600. So you'll have to go over to the radio and make sure that the baud rate is set to the 9600 or it won't work.
Yeah, and that is done in the location settings. So you're going to go to, depending on the radio you've got, you're going to press the menu button, you're going to go into the location settings and then GPS settings, and you can change it. And if you're using this with another Uniden radio as well, same deal. Make sure it's set to 9600.
Yeah, that's for sure. And let's dive into the next one. Now, brace yourself. We went from all these wires.
And cable. It gets crazy now.
It gets crazy now with the 200. Look at that. So just the basically the GPS receiver, the box there, and then the phone cable. And there's basically a jack in the back. And guess what? The good thing about the 200, it's self-powered. So we're not dealing with additional cigarette lighter adapter.
Yeah, the GPS gets powered through the phone cable. It's a 4-wire phone cable, and one wire is for GPS signals going to the radio, and another wire powers the GPS receiver. And then there's a common on there. So it makes it really simple. You just plug in the phone cable, one end into the radio, one end into the box, and you're done.
Simple as that. So that's. We told you it was going to get complicated. Nope, not with the 200. Fairly simple and straightforward.
Yeah. Now, if you use the other there's no way to use the other GPS kit. I mean, you can plug it into USB ports. It's just going to ignore it. And you cannot power an SDS200 from the GPS kit. It's the other way around on that radio.
That's for sure. We dive into software now. So there's a couple of different software options available. Uniden created the Sentinel software, which is used to update the internal database, create favorites lists, and update the firmware. So those are three things that the Sentinel software will do. Now we hop over to Butel software, ARC 536 software. If you want to create your favorites list with the traditional software you're used to using, like the ARC XT for your 996 radio, it's going to have the same type of feel. It's going to feel just like it. The difference in between the softwares is you still need both. Rich, why do we need both?
Well, for the zip code type scanners, you're going to need to use Sentinel in order to do the database and the firmware updates. You can use Sentinel to do the favorites list programming, but you need it for the database and the firmware. So so if you've got a Windows computer to run Arc software, you also can run the Sentinel, and the Sentinel's free. So there's no reason not to use it for that. But like Jonathan said before, if you want to do more detailed favorites list programming, or if you want to do virtual control, then the ARC 536 software will let you do that.
And that's the huge differences. So I would still recommend, if you like the look and feel of the Butel software, purchase that. You may want to go to the Pro version. We're going to show you in the next slide what that looks like. The difference is in between the two. So you've got the full database in the Sentinel software when you're creating favorites lists. So you're able to pick and choose by right-clicking on each item and appending it to favorites list. If you're building something from scratch with the Butel software, you're still going to need a radio reference subscription. You're going to be going into the database by going to the internet, which I'm going to widen this out a bit so you can kind of see a little bit better. You still can't really see it, but on the screen there, you can see there's an internet option on the menu that's going across left to right, and then you would go into radio reference, log in there. Once you're logged in, then you would select the city, state, and so on, and import it in from radio reference directly there. But with the Sentinel software, it doesn't require that.
Right, exactly. And we get that question a lot. Sentinel software does not require a subscription. You get full access to the database within the Sentinel software when you buy the radio. So it's basically like a prepaid license, or it's included in the radio, however you want to coach it. When you get Sentinel, you get access to the database that way to go into your radio. If you're going to use ARC software, you need a premium membership at Radio Reference in order to access the database through the ARC software or any other software that supports any of these radios.
All right, and then let's look at the advanced Pro software. You can see here you literally have a virtual scanner on your screen. You're able to do all the controls, that you would normally do touching the scanner. Like, take for instance, Rich's SDS100 is behind him, so we could run a cable up to his computer and allow him to be able to do virtual control. Let's say he's working on his desktop. He's got multiple screens. He could put this at a corner of the screen. He could glance over and see who's talking. He can adjust the volume there. The other great thing is, let's say Rich decides to leave the house for the day and he wants to run the trunk system wide open so it picks up any ID that comes up. So he's not doing a talk group scan. He's basically doing a talk group search. So what he can do is, you can see down below there, it's logging each talk group in the hits. And that will help him to find additional talk groups, that may not be listed on radio reference, and he may want to program into the scanner and figure out what they are.
Yeah, and the neat thing about the logging in ARC 536 is not only does it log the talk group ID, but it also logs the user ID, which is the individual radio number. And that's a great tool to use to try to determine who is using a talk group. If you have a talk group, on this one is 1795, and it's using this radio ID of 10026. And if I go and I find another talk group that's 2194, and I see that same user ID popping up on a regular basis, I know one talk group. I can extrapolate a possible user of that other talk group and at least get an idea of what agency or department or division or group is using that other talk group by comparing the user IDs. That takes a little bit of work, but it can be done, and that's a great way to determine who's using what.
Yeah, and that certainly brings in, I remember when I started in this hobby doing, band searches. This is, this generation of searching for, instead of new frequencies, in this case with the trunk system, you're looking for new talk groups. that are
Yeah.
they're not listed on Radio Reference. And then, like Rich said, we have all the tools to be able to do the detective work and to be able to figure out possibly who is on there by the user ID, and plus listening in, being able to hear what type of communication is taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that user ID logging is a great feature, and it can be very useful. So once you understand how user ID works, it'll be a lot more transparent to you.
So there is the pro version. We're going to continue on. We got a lot of stuff to cover. I see a lot of questions popping up. We're going to try to get to those. A lot of you guys are awesome. I just want to take a quick moment. I see people posting questions, and then other people jumping in and answering it. This is what the Scanner Guys is. It's basically a place where all of us can join in and talk about our favorite thing that we like to do, which is scanning. And a lot of times you could talk to your husband or wife about this, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they just exactly." And this is a place where it's user friendly. Everybody could talk about their hobby, and we enjoy doing it. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. We'll get to some of your questions in the second half. We're just trying to roll through the slideshow presentation. I told you we have a lot to cover. And these are some of the popular optional accessories that you can purchase. We talked about a lot of these. The Rimtronics antenna. There's the adapter for the SDS 100, which comes in the box. So when you get your new SDS 100, make sure you keep this in a safe place. And a lot of times Rich says it gets hidden in the cardboard.
They do a really good job of hiding those in the cardboard, and probably half of those adapters get tossed out with the box.
Yeah, so make sure you thoroughly go through the battery charger, which is great. So if you've got you're using this all the time on the battery charger that we sell comes with an extra battery, so you could swap out batteries relatively easy. So charge them up. You're going to spend a whole day running the portable off the batteries. Once one battery dies, take the old battery out, put the other battery in, and then you're good for the rest of the day.
Yep.
GPS, we talked about that as well, which is a great component if you're using this in the vehicle. That's the most ideal situation. If you're an RVer and you're traveling cross country, that's another thing that you can do. And this is another thing. You want to dress up your shack. We have these Spectrum Force mounts available. We have them for portables, and we also have them for the base unit here. We could see that it fits nicely. We've got I think that's a 996 XT with the SDS 200 right on top. Looks nice. I mean, a lot of us. I mean, I know Rich has got the crazy shack going on there behind him. Most of us have one or two radios. This will dress up your shack and make it look really professional.
Yeah, it does. It really does make it look good. If you've got 2, 3, or 4, or even 5 desktop radios, it stacks them up real nice and neat. We have these racks that come in 2, 3, and 4 radios, and you can put one more radio on top, either on the rubber feet, or you can even get fancy and mount the bracket onto it. But like I say, just put the little rubber feet on the bottom of the radio, put it right on top of it to add to one additional radio. And they work great. It's got the holes where you can put the plastic thumb screws that come with the radio to hold the radio in there. There's enough separation between them so your speakers will still be able to exclude or stick out audio. What do you call throw audio out there? Yeah, there you go.
The volume.
And of course, the wires are all going to come out the back, so you can dress that up real nice. So, and they're flexible. You can, most of us put the SDS radio on the top if they have an SDS radio at the top of the rack, because that's the one you're going to want to look at most often. But they're big enough. There's enough space in there where you can, move the radios around, and it's just a neat item.
Yeah, and they can't forget carrying cases. You're spending like $700 on this portable radio. If you're going to be using this out and about, and it's not going to be on the desk like Rich's, you want to get a carrying case. Protect the radio. It's going to protect it from scratches and dents. And it's very user friendly. I mean, it's got a swivel belt clip. This is a soft leather case. Works great. These are just a handful of accessories that are available for these radios. I mean, we have a lot more as well. So let's continue on with the slideshow here. These are some of the questions that we get time and time again. And we kind of addressed this caller one already. Already because, why doesn't my old antenna work with my SDS? And why, Rich?
Well, it's got that waterproofing collar around it, like we spoke of earlier. And there's a couple things you can do. You can use a BNC antenna with the antenna adapter that comes with the radio. Mm-hmm. Or if you have an SMA antenna, you want to use it. If it's not easily modifiable like a Condor, don't modify your radio. Mm-mm. You've spent $650 on your SDS100. Don't be taking an X-Acto knife and cutting that thing off. That's not the right thing. Modify the antenna if you can. If you can't and you still want to use that antenna, you can get an SMA male to female, which will bump the SMA connector up a little bit above the radio. It might look a little Yankee, but you're not going to be cutting up your very expensive radio. So those are your options if you want to use an SMA or a BNC antenna.
Yeah, and this is definitely something that we get a lot. And
you get a Remtronics that's already built for it.
Yeah. The stock antenna, I haven't had to switch it. I found it works well. I mean, just because the one thing works great on simulcast, and it works great on some of those weaker signals. I mean, for the most part, you can use the stock antenna. Don't be afraid of doing that. This is another question. How can I change the color sachem on my SDS 100 or 200? It's very easy to do. Press the menu button, then go to display, and then go to options, and then customize. But you want to know a secret? It's easier doing it with the Sentinel software.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the neat thing about it is when you're doing it with the Sentinel software, it's all visual. Mm-hmm. Because it's going to show you where it is on the display and give you a drop down to change the contents of that particular segment of your display, and then you can go and change the color, and you can change it. You can make it different for your simple display versus your detailed display. So it gives you a lot of flexibility.
All right, and we'll continue on. And guess what? The SDS has got a lot of other weird stuff it can do. The SDS 100 and 200. If the scanner can do, your typical scanner can do, more than likely your SDS can do it, such as fire tone out, weather alerts, close calls, search limits, trunking search, LCN finder, system analyzing, discovery. So a lot of the features and things that you've gotten used to. Let's say you're looking, I got my 996 XT and I'm going to miss the fire tone out if I upgrade, or I'm going to miss this and that and the other thing. A lot of those things come right on board with the SDS.
Now, one of the things that a lot of times callers ask if it can do weather alert. And I say, yeah, absolutely. It will do weather alert. It does a great job at it. But don't spend $700 on an SDS 200 for a weather alert radio. Go to Walmart and buy one for $25, or better yet, get a BCT 15X. That works awesome on weather alert.
Yeah. Yeah, but, it's an awful expensive radio to use for a weather station. That's, it's kind of, what would we say, overkill?
Yeah, but you know what a good thing is on this one is you use it for the daytime to listen to your local police, and then at night you turn on the weather alert so that, when the tornado is going to hit, it'll wake you up at night.
And the same thing
it will wake you up.
And the same thing if you're a volunteer fireman. The great thing about it, same example as Rich, during the daytime, you have the scanner on, listening to all the calls that are coming in. At night, you may be watching TV or doing or whatever, maybe sleeping at that case, and you want to be able to get the tone out, when your duty department's being, like when your duty squad's being called, you can set it up that way just as your fire pager. And you can have, this is a component that'll also help you work-wise if you're a
Yeah.
volunteer fireman or you're or on-call fireman.
That's why I ended up with so many BCT-15s. Is I was using them for fire toneouts, searching, and for actually monitoring. I had a whole bunch of plectrons for our local fire channel, the next fire channel over, and the one over on the other direction, and the mutual aid channel. And I was using these old plectrons, and as they started to die, I was replacing with the BCT-15s, and they work great for that. But and now I come out here to Arizona, and they don't use fire tones very often out here. So, but I found out they work great for military aircraft too. So,
perfect.
But yeah, you can do all that stuff on an SDS, but think twice before you buy it to do that.
So this week's scanner tip of the week is brought to you by Scanner Master. The Uniden database scanners, some quick tips on them. Have a backup SD card. You never know what could go wrong with the SD card. It could get corrupt. If you don't have a backup, it's going to happen. More than likely, if you have a backup, it's never going to happen.
That's Murphy's Law. When you have a backup, you're never going to need it. But the day that you forget to have that SD card backup is the day that it's going to go back, or it's going to go bad, and it's going to take the most inopportune time and in the worst place. So you're going to be 500 miles away from home, 600 miles away from your laptop, no place in sight in order to get another card, and no way to program it. That's when you're going to need it.
And how often should you update your GPS when you travel? You should update it often, because you know what? You're going into areas that you're not familiar with, and there's constant changes. If you look at radioreference.com, there's constantly things being updated left and right all across the country. So if you travel often, update the database often. Keep your firmware up to date. Why, Rich? Why keep that firmware up to date?
Well, that's going to fix problems with the radios. It'll fix firmware updates. Typically fix glitches or problems. They'll add new features, and they'll update the digital decoding on the radio. So make sure you do a firmware update from time to time, and keep an eye on the Uniden forums at Radio Reference, because as soon as there's a firmware update, it's all over the forums. There'll be a pinned post on it. It used to be Paul, and now it's our buddy Bearcat Joe, or Joe Bearcat, who are going to be updating the users on firmware updates. So when there's a firmware update, you'll know about it, but you can check it by using the Sentinel. We suggest that whenever you do your database update, check for firmware just in case.
The other thing, too, is another bullet point. Don't just use the zip code programming. Try making a favorites list. The favorites list gives you ability to create your own lists. When you create a favorites list, it's going to scan exactly what you put in your list. So visualize it. You've got a virtual shopping cart. You're going through the database, and you're putting in channels and talk groups into that shopping cart. Once it's inside your shopping cart, that's the only things your radio is going to monitor. With the zip code, the radio is determining it by your location, and it's just putting all those things in there. And then you're having to press that avoid button or double tapping it to make it a permanent avoid in case you don't want to ever hear it again. So don't be afraid of creating a favorites list. You can do that through the Sentinel software, or as we mentioned earlier, you can also create that through the Butel ARC 536 software. And yes, I can vouch for that adapter that you're mentioning. The John Wanke, Yes, I have it on my radio. It looks fantastic. It's heavy duty, and I'm happy that there was a quick fix, and it only cost me $10.
Yeah. I don't know the guy, but he does do good work. So
which is fantastic. And the last bullet point. See, we're reading your comments as we're great multitaskers, Rich. I think this show has really helped us. Last but not least point, Rich. What is
Have fun. It's a toy. Treat it like a toy. It's an expensive toy, but it's a powerful toy, but it is a toy. It's meant to have fun with it. It doesn't do you any good sitting in a case or on a shelf, never being used. You want to use the darn thing. That's why you spent so much money on it. And it's not a display piece. It's a tool to use, to listen to stuff. It's a toy to play with. And don't be afraid to go out there and try stuff. As long as you have
that, it's a fun, depending on the situation, inexpensive hobby.
Yeah. My biggest worry is that when I die, my wife is going to figure out how much I actually spent for this stuff. It's like if she knew how much I really spent on these things.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Anyways,
knowing your wife, I guarantee if anything happens, she'll be looking these various things up to see what they're worth. And she's gonna be I know she handles the budget for you. Yeah. And she's gonna be pen and paper. Oh, how much was that? How much was that? She's gonna be like, holy crap, he spent a lot of money on this hobby.
Yeah. And how many sewing machines can my radio cabinet buy?
Oh, we're not going to go there. That's a totally different show.
But like I say, these are fun. Back up your memory card. As long as you read the radio in Sentinel and save that, go ahead and try stuff. You're not going to be able to damage the radio by programming it incorrectly. Mm-hmm. There's no damage. And if you have a backup and if you accidentally delete something, no big deal. You can restore it. So go ahead and play with the menus, figure out 2 SDSs and she got the kitchen. Yeah.
Kitchens are very expensive, especially if you're doing granite countertops and
Well, when we moved in the house, my wife said I could buy a new computer if she'd get the pool. So
oh boy, now we're swapping.
Now this is how to hide stuff from your wife. I have an anti-wife fund.
Okay.
So,
hopefully she's not watching the show, but that could be something that we could cover in a future fun show. Typically, we do every so often. In case you guys are watching us for the first time, it's fun with the scanner guys, and maybe we'll have a topic of things that you'll be able to do.
How to hide how much you spend from your wife.
Yeah. Joe, I would agree. I would agree. The two SDSs do not. The value of the 2 SDSs in the kitchen is way high.
Yeah, but look at it this way: if that's the only way you're able to get the 2 SDSs by letting her get the new kitchen, okay, I can see that.
Hey, and depending on who cooks the meals in the house, that's going to benefit one of you. That's for sure. Yeah. Happy spouse, happy life. Pretty much. Yeah. But yeah, that's all good stuff. So the scanner tip of the week is brought to you by Scanner Master. And where did that other slide go? Hold on one second. Let me just not do this. Oh, okay. Here it is.
Yeah.
Chris
is going to buy all my radios when I die. So
I swapped around some slides. So next week's show, I forgot I did that. Next week's show is the hidden police scanner menu features. Now, Rich and I were making a little bit of jokes about it. McDonald's, Burger King, and a lot of restaurants have hidden menu options. We're going to talk about the hidden police scanner menus. A lot of it's not hidden. It's just not popular, or not everybody knows about them.
Yeah.
I mean, many of you that say that you read the manual cover to cover, they're in there. They're in there.
Everything is there.
Everything's in there, but we don't read it. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to save you some time reading that manual that you say that you read cover to cover. We're going to give you a lot of these hidden menu features. And these are things that you're going to be, why am I not using that? Yep. I'm going to start using that.
And stuff you didn't know your scanner could do.
Yes, exactly. And if you have a Roku or an Apple TV, guess what? Download the YouTube app. You can watch us on your TV. Next week's broadcast, yeah, you could see us on, what is it? The biggest TV was 85 inches or something ridiculous.
Yeah, I think mine's a 70 something. Yeah, and that's all you need is to have my face, more than life size on your wall.
Yeah, you may want to watch us on a smaller television set in your home. Yeah, keep it down to the new iPhone Mini.
Yeah.
We will look mini on there, and that'll help our physique. We won't be so large.
Yeah.
And that's Wednesday, February the 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you tune in. You can watch on any device you wish. We're just reminding you can download the Apple on Apple TV or Roku, the YouTube app, and then search out the Scanner Guys.
Yep. And again, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification icon so that you know when we're going to do it. Now, we do it every Wednesday night at 8 Eastern, 6 Pacific, 5 Pacific. Yeah. I had to do some math there. The problem is my time zone, my time never changes. So the Scanner Show time changes because my time never changes, but everybody else does, so I got to adjust my times to match them. So, yeah, we're going to be here every Wednesday night. But make sure you subscribe to the channel in case we do a special video or we have an announcement to make or something like that.
Yeah, we're going to start doing in the near future, we're going to start doing some behind-the-scenes stuff where it's produced videos, whether it be, behind the scenes of the of shacks and so on. We're going to be doing some more produced stuff on the channel. That's our ultimate goal. I mean, we're building this channel. We've been building this brand for a little bit. We're going to start with some additional content on the channel besides the live show. So definitely hit that subscribe button if you would right now. As I mentioned earlier, the Scanner Guys tip of the week was brought to you by Scanner Master. Since 1978, the nation's oldest, most experienced scanner dealer of all brands of police scanners and software and accessories and programming. They're the experts at Scanner Master. Shop them online and call the experts at 1-800-722-6637. They're open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Shop them online at scannermaster.com. And if you have support questions, you can email them as well at support@scannermaster.com. A lot of the products that we featured tonight in this broadcast are available at Scanner Master. Make sure you give them some love as well. Follow, like, and subscribe to their social media as well. So we are in our Q&A section of the show, in case you're a first-time viewer. So let's dive into that right now. We've got a lot of questions. We're going to try to get to as many as possible tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to give one giant shout-out to everybody who has given us shout-outs. We've just got too many people tonight to give individuals.
Trust me, that is not a problem because we love having you all here watching. A lot of you, like I said earlier, have been answering each other's questions. I mean, this is a great forum to be able to do that, and we hope to grow the show each and every week. Let me just see how far back I can roll back. Rich, I can only roll back to 26 past.
Yeah, I've been saving them. So a little bit of background on how we do this when we have a long show like this is during the show while Jonathan is babbling on about something that I don't care about, which is when I will be copying and pasting comments every couple of minutes and then pasting them into a Word doc because our software only displays the last couple of hundred comments. So when we get a lot of comments, I copy and paste them onto Word so I can scroll back and see them from the beginning. All righty, so a bunch of check-ins, some new guys, some old guys. So hello, everybody. And a lot of people checked in even before the show started. So we had a lot of people waiting for the show even before we got started. So let's see here. A bunch of new guys, a bunch of regulars. Good evening. Good evening. Looking forward to the show. Hello from Des Moines, Northern Kentucky. Trying to find some specific questions in here. And
While you're doing that, I'm going to go through some of the ones I have access to.
all right.
So Rich A asked, or actually made a statement. He said, the SDS100 and 200, he wished they had the same programming connection. We do too, but I think, as Rich mentioned on that slide, the USB micro is becoming more and more popular. So this is Uniden's way of planning ahead. So we're probably going to see future radios probably having the micro, so it'll become a little bit more standard down the road.
Yeah.
But basically I guess for programming cables, the 200 became the first that would use it for programming. So what I would recommend the people that have multiple radios is one, wherever you do your programming, keep one cable for each type of radio or connector you need. The other cool thing is, I don't have it right next to me, but get one of those label makers that you can get for relatively cheap. And what I call is flagging the cable. Yeah. On the label, make it a little bit longer so you can flag it and put the model radio that the cable is associated with. Particularly if you only have the SDS200 that uses that cable, put SDS200 cable. And then on the other one, all other scanners. Depending on what type of radios you have, or you can do some sort of coding for it. You can even do a flag with colored electrical tape if you wanted to. And don't forget, huge thing, using the Velcro straps that we talk about all the time, to be able to wind that cable up and keep it nice and neat and put it away in a drawer. So make sure you keep your cables nice and neat and keep them where you can access them, because you'll be going crazy every time you want to update your scanner and you can't find the cable. Rich, do you have a second question, I guess, of the evening?
Yeah, absolutely. So Evan wrote, he said that I've been hard at work with my remodeling. So I just finished this cabinet today. So go to Radio Reference, the pictures for me, you see more about it. But basically, it's a 4U cabinet. I got two 536s, two 996s, and a couple home patrols here, and then my SDS is up here. So that's my new cabinet. Just finished that today. That's the one that lives in my desk and replaced the sand. Let's see here. Art asks, how do you determine which P25 filter to use other than trial and error?
Trial and error, pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not. We've talked about this before. It's not really, do this for this. It's finding whatever works best for the system that you're monitoring. Every system is going to be unique and different. So finding the best combination. Remember your starting point and keep track of your changes so you can revert back to the change that was the best option.
Absolutely. And the next one was from Ira. He's in Detroit, and then he's got a local hospital there that's using the NXDN and NextEdge 9600. So can the SDSs work on that type of a system? And is there an adjustment for the baud rate? So, yeah, you can program an XDN system, and it should work on the 9600 bauds with no problem. And as far as I can recall, again, without getting into the radio, I think you just have to program it as NXDN, and I think it automatically determines the baud rate, and it will display NXDN 96 on the display if you have a field set for that. Have you done any NXDN stuff in your area?
I haven't done a lot. I think I should definitely, when I have a little bit more time, sit down and program a couple of the radios and play with it. I mean, I know there's a couple of business systems. That's where we're finding a lot of the NXDN, and a lot of the DMR is primarily businesses. And like you said, this example, a hospital.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of NXDN, well, not a lot, but there are some agencies that use NXDN and DMR for police, fire, and EMS, typically in small towns. Southeast, a lot of that, there's a lot of that in like Kentucky, Tennessee,
Georgia,
downstate Illinois, Georgia, But as far as those 9600 baud trunking systems, it should work with an NXDN system on the Uniden scanners. We talked earlier about the BC125AT and and the question is, how do you tell if you have an older one or a newer one? And Joe M mentioned that there is if you take a look at the serial number, there's going to be 3 digits and then a letter. And if that letter in the fourth character is a Z, that's the older one. And if it's an A, it's the newer one. So if you have an A version, you've got a newer one. If you got a Z, it's an older one. So you take a look at the serial number on the back of the radio, or Z. You can. Can you see it? You got a Z, so you've got an older one. Of course, mine's going to be an older one too, so it'll be a Z. Only the very latest ones will have an A there. So, and that's we were talking earlier about the firmware versions. So, thanks, Joe, for helping us with that. Scott says he's got a radio rack with a bunch of Uniden scanners. 148, a couple of SDS100, a 200, some Radio Shack stuff, some Icon stuff, and a Bofang. So it's got a little bit of the old and a little bit of the new. So that's a great mixture, and whatever works for you is what you want. So I want to give a shout out to Dave. He sent 2 of his friends to us to buy SDS100s, and he likes our show. He thinks we're the best. We are. So give ourselves a pat in the back, and thank you, Dave. We appreciate it. So Braden asks, is there an idea to tell if a trunk system is simulcast on a radio reference? So
yeah, I mean it's gonna display it right on radio reference. You're gonna see a lot of times the trunking system or site name is going to say Mirbury Hill simulcast. It's going to say whatever. I just flubbed something right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's going to say XYZ simulcast, or it's going to say Charlotte simulcast. It'll be the name of the site. So you'll know right off the bat, simulcast. So you're going to be fully aware, okay, this is going to be that slide that we showed you. And if you're right in the middle and you've got yourself a 996T and you're wondering why all the hiccuping and the silence and the fluctuation of the signal meter, that's why.
Absolutely. So a follow-up question to that is Braden says that the Nebraska State radio system is reported as simulcast, but each site's on a different frequency. So on these big statewide systems, usually the simulcast is used. Simulcast is used in the more urban areas. So, like in Nebraska, you're going to have simulcast in Omaha and Lincoln. And maybe a couple of the towns out west, the larger areas where they need that penetration. But the small towns and the sites out in the countryside are typically not simulcast. So typically the sites will say simulcast right on them, and Radio Reference is usually pretty good about saying that on the individual site names. Mm-hmm. So while the system might be using simulcast in that area, it may not be using simulcast in your area. So Starcom, which is in Illinois, which is where I'm from originally, they use simulcast in the Chicago area, in the Peoria area, and the Metro East area, which is the suburban area around St. Louis. Most of the rest of the state is single site, so 996 or 536 will work great. In the Metro East and Peoria and Chicago, and the suburbs around Chicago, you're going to need an SDS because of the simulcast. Is the base SDS200, does it have better reception than the SDS100?
I don't really. It depends. I mean, as we've talked about before with these scanners, depending on the time of manufacture and batch, sometimes they work better than you could have two SDS 200s, and one may play well to a certain band than the other, but they're going to be relatively similar. I would say for the most part, I'm blown away by the 100. I remember monitoring digital trunk systems, and I bring my radio in with me into a store, let's say a big box store. You're in the middle of that store. It's got a huge metal roof. What would happen when with an older radio prior to the SDSs? You would lose reception.
Yeah.
And I remember when I took this into a store because I wanted to try to see if I would lose the digital trunk system. I would go in there in the middle of the store, and I'm still getting it gangbusters. And I'm like, damn, this thing is good. But for the most part, I don't see a difference. Do you?
Not really. My SDS 100 and 200 are sitting right next to each other. They're connected to the same multi-coupler, and that reception is pretty much the same. But with the SDS 100, with the portable and with its own antenna, it picks up much better on these digital simulcast systems or even non-simulcast systems than any other scanner. The VHF and UHF analog reception, it's pretty much the same as the other scanners, but the digital stuff just blows it out of the water. So
I notice a little bit on the railroads, I'm getting a little bit more distance in some of those weaker signals. So I guess it just depends.
Yeah, and there's also going to be variances between individual radios. You put two SDS 100 side by side.
What I was mentioning. Yeah. It's just, like you said that you have some in your rack, you have a whole bunch of 15s, and some of them play well on certain bands. And then once you find that, then you allocate them for those particular jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little clarification on, we were talking before about the simulcast thing. There are sites and there are tower transmitter locations. And so in the terminology for a trunking system, as far as it relates to scanners, is a site has got an individual site ID, and a simulcast set will have multiple towers with one site ID. So technically it's one site with multiple transmitting antennas. So thanks for a couple of the people who mentioned that. I just wanted to make sure we clarify that. So this is one site, but it happens to have 5 transmitters.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They all share that same site ID, so they're all a part of the same cluster. So let's say this is the Charlotte simulcast. These are all the towers that encompass that Charlotte simulcast.
Yeah. So, like I say, so sometimes, that terminology can get mixed up here and there. So they don't confuse transmitters with sites when it comes to that. Most sites that are not simulcast will have one transmitter at the site, whereas a simulcast site will have multiple transmitters for that site spread out over a large area. So Mike has got the Radio Shack 7800 megahertz antenna, which is basically the same thing as the Remtronics. And Remtronics made those antennas for Radio Shack, and now, I'm not sure if Remtronics is the actual manufacturer. I think they are. But those antennas are now made under the Remtronics brand name, and they have expanded out. The original Radio Shack antenna only had a BNC connector because all the Radio Shack scanners at the time had BNCs. And now they make it with the SMA. They make a special one with the for the SDS. They even make one that works right on your SDS 200. And this is the one with the BNC with the elbow on it. So you can go put it on the back of your SDS 200 if you want the Remtronics antenna. It works great. So Frailingham asks, how do you get the latitude and longitude to appear on the display of the SDS 100 when you're connected to the GPS?
So yeah, you're going to remember we mentioned about customizing that display. So what you would want to do is look into that in the manual. We'll probably do a show about customizing the display a little bit more, where we give a live look at how to do that. We did that a little bit in a show last year, but it's easiest to do it during the Sentinel software, and you would allocate a section of that screen to display latitude and longitude. And you want to do this you don't want to do this across all your radios. So if you've got a couple of SDSs, that's going to be irrelevant unless it's a radio that's connected to the GPS, and then it's going to be pertinent information. So it would be on the customization screen, you're going to want to allocate some spots for that, and that's going to be your best way to do it. On like a 15, you can put it into a mode. A lot of the other radios, you can put it into a mode and it'll show latitude and longitude. But on the SDSs, you have to enable that on the custom screen.
All righty. So Dave asks if there's any advantage to have the radio scanning and or searching upwards or downwards.
Not really.
No. It's which way you want the arrow to point.
Yes.
It's not going to scan any faster. It's not going to scan any slower. And I'm not sure why they even allow you to change it, but they do, and it's there. So if you want to scan downward, you can. If you want to scan upward, you can as well. So I really have no idea why they allow you to change it in the first place, but they do.
Yeah. I remember that, on the first scanners that had that, and like,
yeah,
up, down, you could switch it.
Yeah, and I think they do that just to confuse newbies.
I think so. It's going to scan faster if the arrow's up.
Oh, yeah. So John says that when he plugs the port in on the side of his radio, it's talking about the SDS100, his computer assigns it as to a COM port. So, yes, it will do that. So the way these radios work, and this is something that Scanner Master actually initiated, when you plug the USB cable into the side of an SDS100 or to the front of an SDS200 or any of these other zip code scanners from Uniden, it will ask you whether or not you want to go to mass storage mode. And if you don't do anything, it used to sit there and stare at you and say, do you want to go to mass storage mode, yes or no, until you press a button. So we were having some issues with another project. So we got a hold of our buddies at Uniden and said, hey, is that something you can do? So they changed it to a timer. So the radio will automatically go into serial mode after 15 seconds or some time frame automatically, so that you can restart the radio and it will automatically go into serial mode. When you go into serial mode, when you're plugged into the computer, either by letting it time out or by pressing the period button to go into serial mode, Windows will automatically assign it a COM port if it has a valid driver, which in Windows 10 it probably certainly does. So it will automatically do that. And if you press the E for enter button before it times out, it'll go into mass storage mode, and now it'll look on your radio as a removable flash drive, which is effectively what it's doing.
Yeah, essentially, this is at that point, this is a very, very expensive SD card reader.
Yeah.
That's what this basically is at that point.
That's what the SD stands for. SD
card, yeah.
Money. They forgot to put the line through the
yes. But yes, that once you're in mass storage, very expensive SD card reader.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we addressed this or not earlier, but the question came up from Dustin: does the GPS use either one of the serial ports on the radio? I mean, the SDS200's got 3 serial ports, or 3 USB ports, and the GPS doesn't use any of them. On the SDS100, GPS only works on the bottom port.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right.
So, Dave asks, does avoiding channels speed up the scanner?
Well, I mean, if you get somebody yapping on a channel for an extended period of time, yes, because it's not going to be stopping down on that particular channel. So yes, essentially, you're scanning less channels. So if you go avoid crazy, Yes, it'll be fewer channels that you're scanning. So essentially, yes, it will scan faster. And of course, it won't get hung up on those channels you don't care to hear.
Exactly. Now, there is one thing that kind of is in that same vein. Um, when you're scanning a trunking system versus a group of conventional channels.
Oh, I go off on this. Yeah, so go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah. So when you're scanning, let's say you have 100 conventional channels and 100 talk groups programmed into your radio, it will scan the 100 conventional channels and it'll take X amount of time to get through each channel. It's checking each channel for activity, and if no activity, it goes on to the next one. So let's say you've got 100 channels, and if it's going to take 100th of a second to check each channel, it's going to take a complete second to go through your 100 channels. When it gets to the trunking system, it's going to check for the data channel, and when it sees that data channel, it will see if there's any activity, and then it will check to see if any of the activity that it detects is in your list of channels to scan. So if they're in your favorites list or what have you. And if they're there, it'll go to it right away as fast as that.
It's like magic.
Like magic. It doesn't matter if you've got one talk group in there or 500 talk groups in there. It's going to take the same amount of time to check that trunking system because it really isn't checking your individual channels. It's not checking each talk group for activity. It's seeing if there's any activity, and then it's checking to see if any of the activity that it's detected is in there. So it'll take X amount of seconds of dwell time on that trunking system, check for activity, see if that activity is on your is in your list of stuff to listen to. If not, it moves on to the next thing.
Now, the other thing, if you're doing a Starcom 21 system, and you have the scanner in your home, you want to weed down the amount of sites that are in the radio. Only have programmed in there the sites that pertain to that particular area that you're monitoring. You don't want to have a site that's in there that's 200 miles away. The other thing that the scanner will do is it's going to do it rapidly, but it's going to check all those sites to see if there's an active control channel. That's going to slow down your scanner. So what you want to do is you want to weed down the sites and eliminate some sites so it's only the sites that are relevant to your area that you can get reception on. Because it's going to bog it down a little bit as well because, it's got all that nonsense in there for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, remember when the SDS first came out and Paul was discussing the SDS, and somebody asked if it made bagels because it seemed to do everything. And Paul's joke, yeah, well, we haven't installed the bagel maker into the firmware yet. So that was a lot of fun in that particular thread. So Alicia asks where the pizza button is on these radios.
Yeah.
So now, if you've got enough fingers, you can hold down 6 buttons, and I'm not going to tell you which 6 buttons, but if you hold down the proper 6 buttons, when you turn the radio on, it will automatically spit a pizza out the USB jack. So,
which one? The rear one that we don't know what the use is for?
Don't tell people what that's for. It's a very small piece of pizza, but So next thing you know, the forum's going to blow up tomorrow. So I found out the pizza button.
Yeah, the pizza buttons, the combination.
Yes. So John says if you press the function button, you can actually use that to lock out the site. Mm-hmm. So again, a lot of this stuff is buried in the manual. And read the forums and read the manual. You'll find out how to do all these little individual idiosyncratic things that the scanners can do.
Or watch next week. Next week we're going to cover a lot of those.
Absolutely. The 996P2 does have a hold button. Yeah. The 996's hold button is the same as the manual button on older scanners. But yeah, that hold button stops the radio from doing what it was doing, but it only stops the radio on what it was doing at the time. On the SDS100s and the zip code scanners, you have 3 hold buttons, one for system, one for department, and one for channel. So you can stop on a system and scan everything within that system to the exclusion of everything else in the radio, or stop on a department and it will scan all the channels in that department to the exclusion of everything else in the radio, or just hold on one channel. So it's much more flexible. So if you got a fire going on, you hold the department button, you put it on department hold for the fire department, and you can scan the dispatch channel, the fire ground channel, and the fire attack channel. So let's see here. What else? Yeah, don't forget to change your oil on your scanner every 3,000 miles. That's good advice. Also, if you want to release the magic blue smoke from your radio, feel free to open it and start poking around inside the scanner with your screwdriver.
I don't want a lawsuit.
That is a joke, everybody. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yes, the magic blue smoke. We've many of us have seen the magic blue smoke emitting from our scanners.
No, I thankfully not have seen it, and I'm knocking on wood.
Well, if once you see that, it's no longer a scanner. Now it's a $600 paperweight.
Yes.
We talked about the copying the SD cards. Again, to reiterate that, instead of making a copy of the SD card, you're much better off copying the contents of the SD card into Sentinel, saving that, and then you can use that to write to your other radios. And we did discuss some stuff you'd need to do with that. And let's see here. Oh, there's lots of stuff. And Todd asks, does the SDS or the X36 come with a discriminator output on the radio? No, they don't. You can add a discriminator tap if you're adventurous and don't mind voiding your warranty and don't release that, special blue smoke, though. But nowadays, most of the time, you really don't need a discriminator tap. The stuff that you used to use the discriminator tap for before is either already done on the radio, like PL tone and DPL tone decoding, or you can do it with software by plugging directly into the radio already, like Pro 96Com or some of these other data programs. So I used to be huge on using discriminator taps. I don't use them anymore because I don't need them. The only thing I ever use a discriminator tap for is my outboard PL decoder that I use on my R8500, which doesn't have any of these decoding features. But discriminator taps are not as useful now as they used to be. Let's see here. Oops, went too far, too fast. I got a new mouse, and sometimes it goes too quickly. Don't break the battery cover. Yeah, so be very careful when you're taking the battery off of your SDS100. As Jonathan can attest, those clips are easy to break.
Yeah, I haven't. The one time I dropped the radio, I had this radio outside of the case, so I haven't had an issue. The one time I had it out of the case, it just hit just right and split this in half. So, be very careful. That's why I recommend, the whole time I've worked with Scanner Master for over a decade, I always recommend a carrying case, because the great thing, it adds a little bit of a level of protection. And depending on how clumsy you are, if you're super clumsy, you may want to invest into the hard leather case.
Yeah. The hard leather case is the same leather that most police officers carry their radios in, that very stiff leather. It may not fit into a cup holder in the case quite as nicely or have that same feel in hand as a soft leather case, which is my personal favorite. And, of course, that's why they sent me the nylon case, since I love the soft leather, so they sent me the nylon one instead. But when you get the SDS cases from us, they're all basically the same case, just different material. The nylon's actually a really good case.
Yeah,
and I like this belt clip.
Yeah, I love the belt clip.
Yeah. All right. So scrolling down some more. There was a couple comments about the battery voltage display on the SDS100. Obviously, the SDS200 doesn't need that, but so there is if the radio is fully charged, it should show something a little bit above 4 volts at a complete full charge. And as the radio voltage goes down, like Joe wrote there, and it gets down to 3.4, that's where your low battery alert starts popping up. So your range is about 3.4 to 4 point something. And with the lithium polymer battery, it seems like a small range. Don't spill your water.
No, I almost dropped the cap. I'm wondering how loud it sounded after I dumped some more water in my. Because this microphone picks up everything.
Yeah, you got a great microphone, so yeah.
Yeah,
it picks
you
up
can hear the.
Yeah, I heard your stomach growl earlier.
Well, I already ate, so I'm not too sure what that may be. Maybe the.
Oh, that was before, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyways,
working for later.
Yeah. So the battery voltage is a relative indicator, and once you understand the numbers, you'll be able to use that to determine, how much more time you have on your radio. The problem is at X amount of voltage doesn't mean you're going to get 3 hours or 4 hours or X amount of hours. It's all of it depends on how you use the radio, the volume level, whether you're using earbuds or the speaker, backlighting, how much activity. There's 1,000,001 features. So when people ask me how long the battery's going to last, I say anywhere from an hour to a day. And that's about as close as we can get.
It's very much like the example of how you drive a vehicle. If you like to romp on the gas, you're going to be sucking down all the gas. If you slowly ramp up the speed, you're not going to be opening that intake as wide open. So very much like that, depending on your habits.
So and Frank said the SDS100 does come with battery on the display. Yeah, you can turn that on because they use the same. Basically, they came up with the SDS100 and they copied a lot of the stuff over to the 200. So yeah, there is a battery. There is a space for battery on the display, but obviously no battery, so there's no need for it. So, and let's see here. Can you change the time from 24-hour to a standard time? And Rick said, yes, there is. And to tell you the truth, I've never really dug into it. But if Rick is correct, then, yeah, you could change it from 12 to 24. I would imagine you could.
Yeah, I would imagine, too. It's just,
Yeah, I'd have to go into the menu to change that. So if you can do it, it will be in the menu. Mm-hmm. We talked earlier about Denver using, they used to use ProVoice, and now they're on P25. And Braden asked, aren't they fully encrypted? I think for police they are, but I think for fire is still open, but the police channels are encrypted for sure in Denver. But again, check radio reference, and that will tell you for sure what's encrypted and what isn't. Joe P. asks if we're going to get a non-SDS question, which is okay. Asks where Scanner Master is going to get more of the nylon cases for the 396. We have those on order, but they are specially made for us. So I think our manufacturer has to wait for a certain number of products to be ordered for us before he can do a production run. So if you put your email address in on the product page where it says email me when back in stock, we'll notify you when we get them.
The other great thing is all these cases are made right here in the United States, so it's not anything that comes from overseas. So they are a decent price, but you're paying for U.S. Made products.
Yeah, and they actually used my SDS100 to form the dies for them because we didn't have one to spare, so I sent in my SDS to use to form the dies, and then of course they sent it back. So I was away from my SDS for an entire week, and I was so distraught. Does the little GPS receiver need to be outside the vehicle to work, or can it sit on the dash or in a cup holder?
As long as it's visible to the sky, it's going to work fairly well. With the older GPS receiver that we used to carry, the round circle one, you really didn't have to work very hard to put that anywhere in particular. It would work well in the vehicle. With the newer one, it's not as sensitive. So yes, you want to have it opening to the sky somewhere on the dash or somewhere where it's visible. Rich has his hanging on the little hand held. See, I already know what you're gonna tell him. We've been doing this for too long together. He's got it on the hand holder right behind him, just hanging there, and it works fine.
Yeah. And like I say, I've got a minivan, and it's got those electric doors on the side, and there's a little handhold thing when you put it in there. And like I say, it works great on there. My old car, I had it. What I did is I put a little piece of Velcro, and I put a little piece of matching Velcro on the door pillar between the front and rear doors on the back side, and just popped it on there, and it worked great there.
Perfect.
Last week we talked about the new programming cable for the 996XT through the 9-pin serial connector. Are they now in stock? Well, unfortunately, that was such a popular item on our show last week. We are now sold out of those. Again, put your email address in there, and I will check with our office tomorrow to make sure that they've got new ones on order. That's been a great product, and I use all my radios in the cabinet use those cables, and they do work great. Let's see here. So we have the model number for our universal GPS, and that is the BCS GPS,
which is right on the screen right now.
Yep, that's the universal kit. Works with all Uniden zip code type scanners and 996s, 325s, 15s, and any GPS enabled scanner from Uniden that works on there. Ivan monitors a P25 system in Plano, Texas. And the SDS handles great, but there's some channels are still encrypted. So unfortunately, there's nothing you're going to be able to do with any scanner that'll make encryption work.
Yeah, there's only the April Fool's firmware edition that'll decrypt encryption, which is that's why they call it the April Fool's version, because it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago, a year or two ago. That was posted up there, and it really got a lot of people on that one. So, how hard is it to pick up anything that's 80 miles away to your north? Well, if it was to the south, you would have no problem. But since it's to the north, you ain't going to get it. Yeah.
It's all about location, and what type of system they're monitoring and their location. Take, for instance, I'm two counties away from... I have a county in between me and Charlotte. And I'm able to pick up the Charlotte system with no problem. It's because of elevation and where their sites are. So, that's probably about 26 miles away. I've picked up things that are to the west of me that are 2-3 counties away, conventional channels. It just depends on type of system, your location, where their transmitter sites are. So it's not going to all be, it's the perfect scenario, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no way we're going to tell you exactly how many miles you're going to be able to pick up a certain system by. We can tell you that, you got a good shot at it, or I wouldn't bother with it from where you are. But a lot of that is dependent, the higher you get your antenna, normally the better your reception, and there's all kinds of things. So there's no way to tell for sure.
I saw this question earlier from Frank. The speakers are typically on the bottom of the radios, and it will reflect off of the radio that's below it or reflect off the desk. Depending on if you want to invest into an external speaker, we do have one, $15 through the website. Yeah. So what you could do is you can get a couple of those external speakers, put them on the side, or position them however way you want. But yeah, it works fairly well for a quiet environment if you're not if you got them stacked together, but if you want to have them a little bit louder and kind of adjust the direction of the sound, yeah, get an external speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. At an hour 12, Jim asks, how many people think that the waterproofing is needed on the SDS100? He'd buy a new one if it came with the BNC connector. I don't think the water resistant or waterproofing is really all that necessary on a scanner, but other people might differ. Personally, I'm not that, it's not that important to me, but it is what it is at this point. Now there are adapters you can get.
Yeah, there is adapters.
The one that comes with it, and the guy that you bought the battery clip from, he makes a machined BNC adapter that fits right into that the connector on the radio, and it does actually look like it was meant, like the radio was built with a BNC connector, and a BNC antenna will work. So that might be an option as well.
Yeah, and most of his products are relatively inexpensive, so that would be definitely to take a look at that. If you go looking through the Uniden product line, I'm going to give you a little bit of history on this. There's a radio, a marine radio, that looks exactly like this one, and I think they use the same body mold, and that is weatherproofed as well. So, so it's not in the same scanner family, but it's a marine radio that Uniden has, and these buttons are probably the talk button, the one that's on the side here. So I mean, you look at it, it could be a two-way radio type of layout with that.
Yeah, they reused some of the engineering for that. So, so if you want to look at Dale's kitchen that he had to buy in order to get his SDS200s, go to the Scanner Guy's Facebook page. He's got a picture there, so that'll be good. Chris had said that he had asked earlier about he wanted to make sure he got the right SD card. And while we were working, I looked it up. And Chris, you did get the right SD card for your radios. So when that arrives, just pop it in and you're good to go. And let's see here. Some more ways to get things past the spouse. We'll have to do that with the Fun with the Scanner guys. So Dave uses the recording feature on his scanners to catch his traffic. He's also using a program that was created by a guy that was used to handle Troy Mail from Radio Reference that apparently he's passed away. And that helps match the talk group ID with the user IDs from Unit Talking. So I haven't seen that software. Jonathan, have you?
I haven't, but that's definitely something that we could look into and kind of dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that as well. That sounds like it would be interesting. So the global audio filters, we touched on this a little bit earlier. Can we go in a little more detail on when to use it? Basically, it's you try it, and if it makes things better, that's great. If it doesn't, try something else. Yeah. Unfortunately, there was never any real documentation about how that stuff worked beyond try it and find the best setting. So, like I say, there's been a lot of discussion about that in the forums, but it was never definitively mentioned what the numbers were and such. So it's all hit or miss.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they put in a lot of... I remember when we were working on the radio, they put in all these filters, and we were trying it, and we weren't... Minor differences. I mean, it's just...
So Jeff has got a 996 and a 436. Does he need an SDS? Well, need and want are two totally different things. You want an SDS, but whether or not you actually need it depends on whether... Pretty much if you're getting any simulcast problems there.
Yeah, and then the thing is if you like some of the additional features that the SDS provides, the larger the screen, a more up-to-date radio. I mean, I'm using 536s here, and then I have a 996 and I have the SDS. And they all find their. I mean, look at Rich's shack back there. Every radio has its place in there, and they do certain things. So yeah, I mean the great thing about it is you can either add a radio to the collection, and each radio has its place.
There was a question about the SDS100. Can he run it off the cigarette lighter power? So yes, you can. Two things to remember. Number one, most cars these days already come with a USB port in them. My car's got 4 that I know of, and I'm sure there's more in the back seats, which I've never been on. So I found out. I've had this car for about 1.5 years now. I just found out a couple months ago that I've got an AC outlet in the back seat of my car. I had no idea it'd been there, So, but most cars these days have a USB port in them, and you can power the radio from there. If you're going to get a cigarette lighter adapter, make sure it's 2 amps or better, because the radio does draw a lot of power. And the SDS100 is relatively unique in the portable scanner world, at least for Uniden, is that you can change a setting in order to allow it to charge the battery and run the radio at the same time. On the 436, 325s, 396s, when the radio is on, it runs the radio off the outboard power if you have it connected to outboard power. If the radio is off, it will charge the batteries. Carlos, on his display, he's got a white square on the top left corner. How we can get that back to black? He believes there used to be an F there. That's probably in your screen customization. So check your screen customization. Make sure that corner is black when not in use, or whatever your background color is when not in use. And then when you press your function, that your function comes up with a different color. You don't want a white on white situation because you're never going to see it.
Read it.
Yeah. So you can change your background color, and you can change your character color. So they can't be the same color, because then you'll never see the characters because it's the same. So if you got a black screen, make your characters white or pink or blue or something that contrasts against the black. Butch asks if I'm using separate antennas for each radio or sharing antennas. I am a huge fan of Stridsberg multicouplers. I have 4 in the big cabinet and 1 in the little cabinet. So I have several antennas. I've got about 20 antennas up my attic, and they all come down to a patch panel behind the cabinet. But I do have a lot of antennas, but not every radio doesn't have its own antenna. The scanners all share antennas. So, and that actually works out very well. And let's see here. We should also do a show on, recommend people use a USB extension cable for your cable box. So, if your USB cable isn't long enough, you can get an extension. I've got a couple of those. Be careful, though. For power, you're going to get some power drop the longer your cable is, so you might not get enough power to run the radio, but and you might have some data loss if it's too long. So don't use the longer cable than you really need. And Ron says we should do a show on the clean slate scanners, the 996s and 325s, etc. So we'll put that on our show list. So I'm not sure I understand this next comment. A trap with the NXDN. He had it set to NXDN at one frequency, and when he made it just straight NXDN, he allowed the trunk system to work. All right, so an NXDN one frequency, as well as a DMR one frequency and a P25 one frequency, is used on conventional channels to allow you to see things like radio IDs and talk group numbers, because even though conventional repeaters of those digital modes are just a single frequency, they use a lot of the trunking features. specifically radio IDs and talk group numbers. So you can have multiple talk groups on a single digital channel, whether it be DMR, P25, or NXDN, and it'll work just like a trunking system, but there's no control channel. If it's a standard NXDN trunking system with a control channel, make sure you program it as a trunking system. So if there's only one frequency, there's no control channel, so program it as an NXDN1 frequency. If there's a control channel, program it as a trunking system and make sure you have a site. Let's see here. What's coming from Uniden? I don't know, but maybe Joe Bearcat will let us know when he digs out of the backlog.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Uniden, a lot of times they're very quiet until they're ready to let the customer base know. I mean, as soon as we're allowed to or able to, we will certainly announce it here. So that's another reason, subscribe to the channel
absolutely.
as well.
Jim asks at 44, is there any advantage to picking up a newer model BC125AT? Not really, other than it's a newer radio. There's no additional features to the newer versions of the 125. It's just there was some internal component changes that forced them to make a newer firmware version for it. It doesn't do anything that the older radios didn't do. So there's no substantial. If there were any changes to the radio, they would have changed the model number, BC135 or something like that. Let's see here. The up-down is good. Is if you miss something, you can dial back quickly. Oh, okay, there you go. Go up to radio waves at 46. That's a great idea. The up-down, if you miss something, if you're usually doing the up mode, you miss something and the radio is restarting scan, turn the knob the other direction and it'll bring it back quicker to that channel. If you've got a lot of channels in your scanner at that time, that's a great trick. I never thought of that. So yeah. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it looks like a couple people came up with that same suggestion right around the same time. So Radio Waves, Ron, and Gordon all came up with that all within the same minute. So let's see here. With all those radios, we haven't mentioned it's worthless when they've gone encryption. So if they've gone encryption,
the hobby doesn't end then. I mean, there's still other things you can monitor. That's the great thing about scanners. I mean, if you're a police fan and the police department goes encrypted, more than likely your fire department's still in the clear. You just have to change your listening habits, essentially.
Yep. Yeah, and like you mentioned last week, if the police are encrypted, a lot of times on the big stuff, the fire department's going anyway, so you can get an idea what's going on by listening to the fire channels. And even if the fire department goes encrypted, you still have other channels. There's railroads, there's aircraft, there's water, marine channels, there's military, all kinds of neat stuff to listen to. I very rarely listen to police calls. I mean, I was a police officer for 30-something years. I don't listen to police calls very often at all. So that really has no interest for me anymore. So I'm listening mostly to aircraft and railroads, and then doing a lot of searching for new stuff. So to each their own. And again, going digital doesn't mean that they're gone encrypted too.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that at all.
All righty. So let's see here. We talked about all this stuff. Frank writes that the system lower left button will immediately get you back to scan mode from the menu mode. Great tip. When you're in the menu mode and you want to start scanning, press the system button. It'll bring you right to scanning. That's a great tip. I use that all the time. And thank you, Frank, for that. And the avoid button will usually exit any menu point. And also, when you press a menu, or let's say you're into several menus, you've pressed the menu button, you've gone to this, and then you've gone to that, and you've gone to this so you're several layers deep into the menu. Every time you press the menu button, that will bring you back a layer. So like you're peeling the onion, it brings you back
you're
to this.
taking my thing, the onion.
Taking
peel.
your thing. So that brings you back a level. So sometimes I've been 5 or 6 layers down, and then I'd press the menu button once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times to get to the scanning. So you can bring you back up to the main menu. All righty. Let's see here. So Kevin says his SDS will go down to about 3.2 volts before the radio shuts itself off. The alert normally starts at about 3.5, according to Joe. And so your radio might be a little different, but once that radio starts beeping at you, it's time to charge the battery or plug it in. Brian says he uses a little bit of silicone grease on the latch. It helps making the latch a little smoother, and that's reducing the stress. But I wonder if that might make it pop off easier.
I don't know.
It's like squirting WD-40 on the brakes on your car so they don't squeal. Don't do that, guys. Don't do that. That was a joke. We cannot be held responsible for the consequences of our jokes.
Yes.
Gary asks if the RH96 remote head is permanently done production. Yes, and it has been for quite some time. So they no longer making those at all, which is unfortunate. They're a great tool, but they just didn't sell enough to keep them in process. Mike got a hold of an SDS. He's got the charging cable, but he's missing the USB cable. Well, the charging cable is the USB cable. So if you've got the cable that charges the battery, unplug that USB plug and use that to plug into your computer. So that's the same cable. And that's actually a very common question that we get. And you can get those cables. There's a standard, on the SDS100, it's a standard everyday USB mini cable. On the SDS200, it's a USB micro. Let's see here. If you need a program, we talked about that. So Dave says the GPS can also help reduce the amount of channels that are scanned. Yes. Yeah. A few other tricks, and we've talked about this with the GPS, is to set your range to 0 and try that.
And use a favorites list.
Use your favorites list if you can. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to stand up.
So there is another Rich Carlson out there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Where is it? I'll post it.
He's one of our regular customers, and he's like my brother from a different mother. But yeah, this is another Rich Carlson.
I was gonna say you've been I was looking at the time. It was 10:10 on the East Coast, and I'm saying you're talking. How did you have time to type this?
When am I not talking?
Yeah. Well, I think when are we both not talking? I mean, well, I get a little bit of break in this section, but he's got some SDSs just like you. So they're great for decoding local simulcasts, but it seems I've increased the system hold to latch on to require the certain radio transmissions compared to his 390. This 436, 436, 536s.
You can adjust those settings. Again, it's one of the menu items. It might be a per radio thing like we were talking about before. I haven't noticed that myself, but of course I really don't use my 536s for trunking. I use those more for conventional stuff. So, it might be true. I just haven't noticed that personally.
So you're not using all those radios for weather alert?
No, I use the SDS200 for weather alert. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all that does, right?
Yeah, and I use the SDS100 to listen to one analog channel. Period.
Okay.
Okay, so Jeff writes that his SDS gets very hot during use when it's not plugged in. Is that normal? it will get warm. And one of the reasons why it's got that big honking battery on the back is it uses up a lot of juice to run the SDR. Juice. And the more juice it uses, the warmer it's going to get. So,
yeah, it's thinking a lot, so it's getting hot.
It does. So, yeah, they are going to get warm. It shouldn't be hot to the touch, but it is definitely going to be noticeably warm.
Yeah, if you can fry an egg on your radio, then you need it to be looked at.
Yeah. So Carmen is getting confused when you swap us left to right. And there is a reason for that. When I'm doing Romper Room, I'm reading stuff that's over on this side of the screen. So Jonathan flips me over to the other side so I can still see him while I'm reading this, so I'm not doing this all night.
Yeah, so I flipped it back just to play with you guys.
Just to mess with people.
But yeah, usually during the beginning of the show, I will be on this side, and then the latter half of the show, I will flip back over here. So it'll just keep you guys on your toes. And it's very much like magic.
It is, and we want to reduce the screen burn-in. You know, when you're watching us for 2.5 or 3 hours, we don't want you to have my face permanently embedded into your screen. That would be very traumatic.
Yeah, or this beautiful railroad crossing sign. We don't want to have that.
I've got a real one out in my garage. If I had a place to put it in here, that would be a great prop.
I think your walls are pretty full right now.
Yeah, I got enough crap in here. Randy said he had that function box as well. The colors were reversed. So, we talked before about the guy that's got the square up in the one corner. That's just he got to change the background color on his screen customization. Let's see here. Back from the alternate universe, back to normal again. Yeah. Chris says that the RH96s are going for like $300 on eBay. Boy, I should sell them. I got 6 of them out in my garage. I should start selling them on eBay. I could buy a couple more SDSs.
Yeah. I'll sell a couple for me so I can get an SDS too.
There you go. So, we're going to have a GoFundMe for another SDS for Jonathan and Rich.
Yeah.
So,
especially for me.
Yeah.
My current state. Yes, I definitely need it.
Yeah.
But it looks like we've reached the end.
Yeah, we have. My gosh, yeah. I mean, we had so many viewers, and we had more comments tonight than any other night that we've had a show. And I skipped over about 90% of them because otherwise we'd be here till 3 in the morning.
So I just want to thank you all. We've reached 2 hours and 30 minutes. It was a long one tonight. Those of you that have been able to stick around with us, thank you so much. We appreciate it. The show is growing in popularity. We love it. Make sure you tell your friends, your family that are Skinner enthusiasts about the show. As the audience grows larger, we're going to have more questions, more people putting in their input, tips and tricks. We're going to learn. As you guys are learning from us, we're learning from you as well. I mean, there's things that, we're considered experts in the industry, but the thing is, we're always learning every day.
Yeah.
And anything
that's how we became experts. We've been learning and watching and listening.
Yeah, and we continue to do all those things, learning, watching, and listening. I just want to thank everybody. Hit that subscribe button. I just want to remind you a couple of things before we wrap it up this evening. So let me just see here. We're going to go here. Let me just going to do that. And let me just pull this off. So next week, we're going to talk about those hidden police scanner menu features. They're not really hidden. They're basically things that are in the manual that we glaze over. We don't pay attention to. We don't know what their purpose is. It's kind of like, McDonald's having I read something today when I was trying to research how to word this topic. McDonald's has a land, air, and sea type of thing where they got a sandwich that's got a chicken on it, fish on it and hamburger, which I
don't know if that would be a.
but that was on one website I saw. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the scanner hidden menu features. That's going to be next week, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, Wednesday, February the 3rd. That'll kick off our February's programming. We're also going to have a guest next month, which is very familiar to everyone on this show. We're just locking in all that details. So that should be exciting. We're not going to reveal that just yet until we lock in the time, but everybody knows that particular person. He knows. Oops, I just revealed a little bit. He knows who he is. So make sure if you're a Roku.
Our Joe Bearcat has popped up on our chat.
Oh, Joe. Let me just let's take a look here. Where
8:30, 33 after the hour.
33.
He has made an appearance.
Hey, Joe Bearcat, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We can't wait to have you on the show as well. But, we're available, as I was mentioning, on YouTube. And you can download the app on your Apple TV and Roku. Rich, it's very simple to watch us on your Apple TV, right?
Yep, absolutely. I got the YouTube app on my Apple TV, two of them, right now.
And that's awesome.
So I got Jonathan on one screen and me on another screen.
No, that'd be quite a thing.
That would be quite the trick, yeah.
We'll say that for next week, that's for sure. So definitely check that out. Train Aficionado Live. For you guys that are rail fans, make sure you join us on Monday. So you're going to get a double dose of Rich and I. Monday, we're going to be on the Train Aficionado Live show, which is on the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. We're talking about rail fanning in the 2021. We're going to go over some of the things that you need to know about, and that's going to be a good show. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to all the Train Aficionado social media, and check out the blog, trainaficionado.com. Definitely join us. It's always interesting. Keep it right there. And follow, like, and subscribe to the Scanner Guys. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Check out our website, thescannerguys.weebly.com. And that's it. I can't think of anything else. Is there anything else you want to add before we leave, Rich?
No, just want to thank everybody that showed up tonight. And I know it's a long one. And for those who stuck with the entire show, God bless you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you again next week. Same time, same channel. We can't wait to have you guys on with us. We enjoy it. And Train Aficionado Live Monday night. And then the Scanner Guys back on Wednesday night. So we're looking forward to that. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
Have a great night. Stay safe out there. And if you're in the Northeast or anywhere where it's cold, stay warm.
Yep.
All right.
Hey, it got down to the 40s here. So, yeah, it's cold.
Have a good night, everybody.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye.